Good morning. Glad to be with you here on this Monday, talking to you about you and your business. What we do every Monday morning is we line up the one and only Steve Beaman for the Society for the Advancement of Financial Education out of Illinois, an organization that I'm passionately involved in here in the state of Texas as we expand this around the country, to talk about what's happening on the news front and how it applies to people in their finances, in their business, in their personal life. And I look forward to doing it every Monday. Welcome.
Well, good morning, Kevin. How are you on this beautiful day?
Doing great. Let's talk a little bit about, first of all, the society before we get into the news of last week and how it might apply to this week.
Well, indeed, we're always happy to talk about what we're doing at the Society, and the big news is we've been selected as the keynote speaker for the Jumpstart Coalition meeting in July at the Chicago Federal Reserve. So we're happy to be presenting to professionals about the importance of savings and how we as a professional investment community can help people understand the importance and the critical nature of building savings in their lives. You know, the average American is about one paycheck away from a real problem, and we want to help move the needle and solve that. So we're excited about that. In addition, we've been contacted by a couple of different financial services organizations to go out on the road to their troops and speak and preach the message of financial literacy. So we're excited about that, in addition to the work we're doing with you and everywhere else around the country. So we're getting the message out, and that's the big thing. But we continue to empower people with the knowledge and tools and resources they need to build better, bigger, and more prosperous lives.
Yeah, absolutely, and we need more of all of those. Let's talk a little bit about the news, and boy, was there a lot. Last week, the Senate allowed for debate, rather overwhelming numbers, on the amnesty bill. Rand Paul, somewhat surprisingly, I don't understand the Rand Paul crowd. They think it's frustrating to get American values being maintained and American rule of law being maintained with the current demographics. What is it going to be like with a bunch of illegals becoming legals who have no cultural history similar to ours? It's like suicidal to watch these guys.
Well, Kevin, you know, this is interesting, and again, there's so much news. You and I could do this every single day. But the reality is the Gang of Eight with their proposal on immigration has sent shockwaves through the system, because they are looking at putting together a program that will make it effectively amnesty for, 30 million or 15 million, some number of, currently illegal aliens. Now, they are putting prohibitions in there on getting social welfare services, so I think that's what's caused some of the conservative support, or theoretically conservative support. So I do think it's going to pass. I'm not optimistic about it not passing, and I think we'll see a whole lot of new Americans coming in as a result.
Yeah. Very sad, very confusing, to say the least. So let's talk about that NSA briefing that, apparently I think, they had the NSA director come in, and then essentially he said, I need to talk to you guys privately in light of what I'm talking about. What do you think? What's your thoughts about all this? Because you got people on the far left who are supportive of the NSA tactics, and a lot of conservatives who are very supportive of it. And so it's creating a lot of confusion for the rank and file of both ideologies in between. And, of course, libertarians are opposed to it, be they left-wing libertarians or right-wing libertarians. Talk a little bit about this.
We're certainly creating strange bedfellows with this one.
Yeah.
You have that eternal struggle of safety and security versus freedom and liberty. And I think it was Ben Franklin who said, if you want safety and security over freedom and liberty, you deserve neither.
Yeah.
The problem here, of course, is that we do live in a dangerous world. And we all know, as a result of that, we've developed systems and structures with the National Security Agency, the CIA, and others to help keep us protected. The problem is, of course, when they throw a broad blanket around and start collecting data. Well, you and I both know you can retroactively connect the dots to say all kinds of things. And as you know, if you and I say, well, gee, Kevin someday wants to run for political office, they're going to be able to pull your background data up. And if you've ever done anything remotely close to gray, they're going to pull it out on you. And I think that's what's got the libertarians concerned, rightfully so. So I tend to be a little reticent of this. It depends how it's being done. I do not trust the government. I think that's a fundamental thing. We've seen the political use of it with the IRS, and I think to trust the NSA is just as dangerous. So we need to be very closely monitoring it, and I think we need to hold our elective representatives accountable to say we want to know from you what's going on to the extent we can.
Yeah, I was uncomfortable with the Bush administration's Patriot Act, and became frightful when I saw it in Obama's hands. And the bottom line is that we should care less about the personalities, but the fundamental principles behind the idea of government having that much information on us. We should be concerned about it regardless of who's in charge.
Kevin, you're so very right with that. You and I have talked frequently about the reason we established as a republic and not a democracy. One of the fears of the Founding Fathers, and we hold today, is that power corrupts, and ultimate power corrupts ultimately. And so it doesn't matter if you support President Obama, if you support President Bush. When you give the government this much power, it will come back to bite you at some point, regardless of who's in power.
Yep.
I think Americans need to wake up to that and be very conscious that their very liberties are at stake here.
Let's talk a little bit about one of the big stories that kind of got a little more stock over the last week, a story that's been around now for quite a while, well over a year. The Syrian situation, which now is becoming clear that they are using chemical weapons. Talk a little bit about that.
You know, it's good that you bring it up again, because people need to be aware that while all these scandals are going on here in the United States, the world is going on around us. And Assad in Syria has now taken to the point of using sarin gas on his citizens. And, this gets to a fundamental, what is the United States question? Are we going to step out and create, for example, a no-fly zone in Syria like we did in Libya? Are we going to actively help the rebels to overthrow what is a despotic regime? That's a fundamental question. Should the United States get involved? And I think most of us say, you know what, when there's slaughter going on, we have a fundamental responsibility to get involved. And I think ultimately we will. I think we'll see a no-fly zone. But we need to recognize these rebels are jihadis. I mean, they're not nice guys either.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And all we have to do is look at what's transpired in every one of these Arab Spring countries, and it doesn't look good. Pluralism is being shot between the eyes. Human rights is being shot between the eyes by each of these news regimes. And what should be of particular interest, it's amazing how Christians lack self-interest as a population, and the majority of Americans consider themselves still Christian, yet you've got Christians in particular who are being oppressed by these new regimes throughout the Middle East.
Oh, Kevin, it's terrible. In fact, we had a recent open mic incident with the Egyptian Central Committee in which one of the Egyptian parliament people actually said we're at war with the United States and Israel, flat out.
Yep.
So we do need to be aware. This is not as, one side likes to spin all this Arab Spring as such a good freedom thing. The reality is quite different. We need to be cautious geopolitically that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot, and this Assad situation is one of those.
Yeah, I'd rather have some bribed dictators that were pro-West and pro-Israel than the morons that are in now that will continue to take money from the West while they destroy our interests. I mean, to me, it makes zero sense.
Obviously, you define Hosni Mubarak. I mean, he was our guy. He kept peace in Egypt, kept peace in the Middle East. And, yeah, he wasn't a nice guy, but in an area of the world where nice guys finish last, you kind of want that strong man in power that's on your side. He wasn't terrible. He wasn't despotic, out killing people. And so I think we make a fundamental mistake when we underestimate the violence in the Middle East and the propensity toward violence by some of these rebel groups.
And by Egyptian standards, Egypt was very pluralistic. There was equal discomfort for everyone versus highly targeted oppression that's taking place, I think, particularly of the Coptic Christians that are being attacked.
Right. I mean, you hit it. We're seeing it. And if you want to see a lack of freedom, walk into Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Women are considered property, homosexuals are killed, and Christians are completely discriminated against to the point of death. So, again, I think Americans need to be aware of this. We need to be watching Syria. We need to put pressure on the Russians and their allies to say we need to stop this now because we can't have the wholesale slaughter of people using chemical weapons.
Steve Beaman with the Society for the Advancement of Financial Education and myself, we're on a roll. We're going way past clock time. When we come back, though, we're going to have more of Steve Beaman right here on The Price of Business.